Hey, how are you? You are here with the two Charlottes. Thank you for tuning back in again. Today we are going to be spilling the tea on teenagers and pressures and traumas that they go through in, the day-to-day life, because being a teenager is pretty rough. Having both of us obviously have teenage children, so we see what they're going through, and having been through it ourselves, it's been quite interesting. When researching this podcast, I was talking with Grace, who's just 16, and a lot of the things that she says are pressures that she feels are pressures that I felt, and I know that Charlotte did as well. So we thought we'd
Yeah.
kind of start the podcast off with maybe going through a few of the things that we felt were pressures as teenagers, and you know how that affected teenage life. And yeah, so do you want to start, Charlotte? Do you want to just talk a little bit
Yeah,
about?
absolutely. Um, it's crazy, really. Like becoming a teenager for me was really when I felt like my world changed a little bit and things got really, really hard. And I know that you go through you talk to your parents or you have your teachers at school, and you know that when you sort of hit puberty and that sort of age that things are going to change, like that it's something that is really well documented and talked about in society. However, I don't think anything really prepares you for it. And I can't speak to what it's like for a boy, but I know growing up as a girl, when I hit about probably younger than being a teenager, probably when I was about 10, 11, things started to change quite a lot for me,
Mhm.
with how I felt inside of myself and how life seemed to change for me and how much harder everything got. And when you were saying about Grace's, kind of pressures and the things that she thinks about now to me, and you were saying it was the same as what you'd struggled with, and the same for me then as well. You've got 26 years ago, 16 years ago, and then now. And it's just crazy for me how sorry, I'm losing my voice a bit. Crazy for me how, you know, times have changed so much, but growing up as a girl anyway, things are still very much the same. And I struggled a lot, and I know you did as well. And we had very different upbringings, but we still went through very similar issues and things that I felt huge pressure on as a teenager. And I think really looking back on it, it seems almost superficial because for me, it was all about how I looked, how other people perceived me, and whether I could fit in with them. So, but those problems seem so small and insignificant to me now. But at that time in my life, it was literally everything. It was such a major stress for me. And one of those things was absolutely my skin was a huge issue for me. I've always had really oily, problematic skin. And when I was a teenager, I just hated it. I wouldn't put my face up. I didn't want to look anyone in the eyes, didn't want people to look at my face. I was very self-conscious about how my face looked. I was never an overweight child. I was always very active and, skinny, really, but I was obsessed with my weight, with wanting to be skinnier, with feeling like I was always fat. So how I looked was a huge thing. The clothes that I wore, making sure that I looked fashionable, or that I looked cool, and people would think that I was cool if they saw me, or that they would think I was older and that I could fit in with people. I mean, I think I said to you the other day that I was never one of the cool kids at school.
Mhm.
Like I was never one of the really popular girls, I was just like everybody's friend. I was never one of the real like brainy kind of what we called the kinos. I was never in that clique. I was never really in a particular clique. I was quirky anyway, so I could fit in with kind of weird people or goths and that sort of style. I liked movements or sport. I could be sporty if I wanted to. I could sit down and pretty much chat to anyone. Had a couple of really, really good friends while I was going through school, but a lot of my teenage years were spent obsessing about how I looked and how other people would perceive me. And that was a huge source of stress. And then I think what added to my own difficulties and my own insecurities was that my home life was going through turmoil as well. So I had nowhere to just kind of be to just feel safe and secure. I left home while I was a teenager. My home life before I left home was, I think I said this to you the other day. It was like I felt like I was always walking on eggshells at home. I never knew when the next explosion was coming. I felt like no matter how hard I tried to do the right thing or be a good kid at home, I was always the one that was getting shouted at or blamed for something. My mum and dad were going through their own issues. So the tension between them was awful. I mean, me and my brother, my sister's a good bit younger than me, so she didn't really talk so much. But me and my brother used to hate mum and dad being in the house together at the same time, because if it was just mum, she'd be happier. If it was just dad, he'd be happier. But if it was the two of them, there'd be arguments and tension and shouting. And I can remember having to go downstairs at nighttime and tell my mum and dad to just shut up, because my brother and sister were crying in my bed again because they were arguing. And it was a really toxic environment in my home. And, back then as well, though, there was a lot of parents that probably felt they should stay together for the kids. Like, I can remember one of my friends' parents getting divorced, and it was like the first parents that had broken up. And it was huge. It was just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, we were all so worried. And then we all started, this was at primary school, and we all started getting worried, like, what if it's our parents next? And it was like, oh my God, even though we didn't want them in the house at the same time together, we didn't want them to separate. Whereas now, like blended families, single parents, separated parents, I mean, it's just so normal that in a way it's kind of weird if your parents are still together.
Do you know, it is actually, it's one of those things like when you actually still, you hear of people that have got multiple kids together, they've been together for 15, 20, 30 years. You sit there and you're like, wow, like how did that even happen? Because
Yeah.
divorce is such a thing and like separation is such a thing, because I think we're all really aware that environments are what breed happy or unhappy children. And you have to sometimes think, is it better just to, put the kids through this for the sake of the fact that they can say that their parents are together? Or should their parents separate and then they get the best of both worlds and they get two happy homes rather than one toxic one?
Yeah, and it's not like, it's not a taboo subject these days. I think that brings it to what we have been saying a lot as well in these, in our research talks and our discussions about these things, is that people are much more open about how they feel these days, and
Mhm.
less worried about the whole stiff upper lip, the children should be seen and not heard, or you shouldn't discuss your emotions, and you shouldn't talk about how you feel. And I think where we've grown on from that, and even what we were saying as well about how mental health is becoming such a more open subject to talk about than what it was when we were young. It was, again, another one of those like really taboo things that you just sweep under the carpet a little bit and try and hide and cover up rather than openly talk about it. And I think that as we are evolving, we're starting to realize that people do change, the way you feel can change, and it's perfectly okay to be happy and to not just stay in a situation that you're in because you got married when you were in your 20s and thought that everything would be perfect for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
I'm it's great that it's like that for some people, but it is not. Like, I mean, God, heaven help me if I was still with the same person I was with when I was 20.
Yeah, yeah, me too, actually.
To be honest. So it's just crazy that, I mean, 20 seems so young to me now. I just don't think a 20-year-old is capable of making a decision, a decision that would, last them for life.
Yeah, no, I agree
There's
there.
so
I
few life
agree.
experiences had at that age.
100%. I still don't think I'm capable of making life-changing decisions
No,
now at 35.
same, same, and I'm nearly 42. I mean, I'm still trying to learn here. So, yeah, so I suppose my insights into my past was, when I talk about it now, um, it does come across to me with, a lot of vanity, but I suppose at that age, I didn't know who I was at all. I was just trying to fit in. So my sense of self was not there. So the only thing I had to really go on, I suppose, was how I looked and the situations around me and how I felt. And I felt like I was walking through a minefield when I was in my
Mm.
like teenage era. You know, my as I said, my home life was completely all over the place. And volatile is probably a word I would use to describe it. So there was no safety net at home for me. School, again, I was just starting secondary school. That's a big transition to make.
Yeah,
And the years going through secondary school with no stability at home to feel, safe and comforted in, with, I didn't feel like I could talk to my parents openly, really. I just, I knew that they had stuff going on between them that they argued about when we were in bed, that they didn't, they didn't trust us to talk to us about what was going on in their lives. There was an awful lot of give and take there. I didn't really feel like I knew them. I felt like I had to be strong for my brother and sister. I'm the oldest out of us all. So home was a whole different ball game. I mean, that was, like I said, walking on eggshells and no real security or comfort there. I had no real sense of self. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted people to like me and I just wanted to fit in and I just wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere, really, I
yeah,
think is what I was searching for, a sense of belonging. And the only way I knew to do that was to fit in with other people.
yeah,
So other people would, think I was pretty or think I was attractive or, be like me for some reason. There had to be a reason for them to like me. And I didn't understand probably that, me being a good person was a good enough reason for people to like me, because I think at that age, your people don't think like that. I knew I didn't want to be a naughty person. I wasn't a naughty kid. I always tried to do the right thing and help people, but I didn't see that as a attribute that would help other people want to like me. It was very much based on what you looked like, what clothes you wore, did you wear makeup or not, did you have cool hair. Those were the things that everybody went by at school.
and weirdly enough, those are the things that are on the list of stuff when I was talking to Grace. It's all
Yeah,
about how you look, how you act, what you like, what you wear on, non-uniform days, the way you
yeah,
talk, who are your friends, like, and obviously, the big massive subject around all teenage girls is body image, and that's
yeah.
probably worse now. And I think we could probably do an entire podcast on body
On
image,
body
how
image.
influencers and social media just make life so difficult. But like, I think a lot of those things, it's mad that it's still the same stuff, the same stuff
Yeah,
that you were feeling. And like a lot of the things that, when I was kind of sitting down to do the research on this podcast with you, a lot of the stuff that I was writing down is all very similar.
yeah,
Like, we did have two completely different upbringings, but when I was 13, I lost my dad, and that just flipped my entire home life. So my little safe, comfortable bubble of, what I thought was happiness and joy all the time wasn't there anymore. And everything was
yeah.
different. Everything was like, I didn't like it. It was, we were
Darker.
all upset. Yeah, it was a
Mm,
darker place to be. And that meant that I was like, I didn't know who I was anymore, because
yeah,
all of a sudden everything I did know wasn't there. It was
yeah,
different. We had different conversations were happening in the house, different people were in the house. We had to move because we couldn't stay where we were. There was a lot more like conflict and stuff happening with, other family members and all this kind of stuff. So it just became this like different place. And I
yeah,
think, and I'm not pointing blame to anyone in this situation, because like, nobody knows how you're going to handle losing your husband until it happens. So there's
yeah.
no, like, I'm not pointing blame in my mum's direction at all for how I felt after dad died, because nobody prepares you for that situation. No one's going to be like, right, this is how you're going to feel and this is how you're going to act when your partner dies and you've got two kids to bring up by yourself. So you
And grief is so hard to navigate.
and it's so messy and it's so different for
Mm,
everybody. So
mm,
like, there's no blame there, but that for me, I think, was definitely the like turning point of not knowing who I was anymore. So therefore being overly critical about everything and anything because I wanted to build this new support network of amazing friends that think I'm so cool and so funny and like the most attractive person because that's what it is really superficial, isn't it, when you're a
It really, that's
teenager?
the word I was looking for. Yeah, it
Yeah,
really is.
it's
And
so superficial.
I don't think there's any real navigating away from that. I think it is almost like a rite of passage that
Yeah.
you have to go through. It's something that we all seem to have gone through
Yeah.
and
Even now,
still,
looking at, what it's like to be a teenager now, they're all going through the same things.
yeah,
And so I do think you're right in the sense that it is like a rite of passage. You have to go through this really superficial level because
superficial.
now
Yeah,
I don't care what I look like. I don't care
yeah,
what other people think of me. I will more than happily go and drop Grace off at Oh Christ 100 hours for a school trip in my pajamas and not even care. Like,
yeah,
you realize how early in the morning it is. You are lucky I have anything on. Okay. Like,
yeah.
I couldn't care
I'm
less.
a hundred
So
percent down with that. I mean,
I'll go to
gone are the
Tesco.
days where I had to put makeup on before I left the house and style
Oh,
my hair. Oh,
I don't
gosh,
even wear
no.
makeup to go to work. I literally put some
Yeah,
mascara on and a bit of bronzer,
and
and
that's it.
like that's it. Like the last time I wore proper makeup was my Christmas party in December. Before that was in the summer. Like I
Yeah,
don't have that kind of insecurities anymore, but you definitely
yeah.
do when you're a kid.
Oh,
And
yeah, without a
I
doubt.
think,
Yeah,
for me, it was definitely like I had to fit in. So I had to do what other people were doing.
yeah,
And if I wanted friends, I had to, wear the clothes they were wearing, like listen to the music they were listening to, dress the same way, do the things they were doing. And that did kind of lead me down a bit of a dark path because, you start thinking, I'll just do what these people are doing. And then you end up in certain situations. And
yeah,
like for me, one of those things, especially as a teenager in school, and this is something I'm not overly proud of, like I'm not proud of it at all, actually, now that I'm a grown person. But one of the things that I did do to fit in was become a bully. And
yeah,
that's something I'm really not proud of. And I bullied one person in particular so badly that she left school. And like that actually, like it hurts me when I think about it now because I think about like if that was Grace, her going to school feeling the way that this poor girl did because like I was bullying her, but it was because, I wanted to fit in and other people were bullying. So I thought, well, I'll just do that. And I was also very angry at that point because my dad had died.
without a
And if
doubt.
I was
Yeah.
angry and upset, I wanted everybody around me to be angry and upset because that's just teenage logic is I feel bad, so you're gonna feel bad about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turned me into a really horrible person, which I'm really not proud of now. But it just goes to show that the pressures of being a teenager will make you do things you probably wouldn't do
Oh,
in
100%.
normal situations.
Yeah. Teenagers are very easily led astray.
Mm,
Um, and I when you told me that you were actually a bully at school, my first response was obviously I couldn't imagine you being a bully. If you gave me £1 million, I still can't picture it. But again, I was like, also I found it really interesting to hear that perspective from someone. I mean, I told you the story. My brother was bullied
mm,
horribly at school, and I would always step in and fight the bullies. And it was boys, and I thought nothing of kicking a boy in the nuts or punching. I punched one boy in the face and broke his glasses, and I nearly got suspended from primary school for that. But because I was sticking up for my brother, there was mitigating circumstances, shall we say. But I had no worries about that sort of thing. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't ever have a day at school where I fell out with people or people didn't call me names or something like that, but I never had to go into school worrying about a bully.
yeah.
I didn't have that. I mean, like I said, obviously I had days when I was like, oh, well, I haven't spoken to so and so, and she's being friendly with someone else, and she might not speak to me in the playground. But that's part of life, and I think,
That's quite
it's
normal, I
very,
think, isn't it?
very, yeah, exactly. It's very, and I don't know about boys. I haven't really experienced this with my son. But with my daughter, it seemed like every day she'd fallen out with one person and made friends with another person.
Oh,
And as a first time mum going through that with her, I am not really ashamed to say that I involved myself in several of those arguments until I realized how pointless it was.
yeah,
And I just, I left it after a while, but I don't know how many parents I came at with an attitude that I shouldn't have had because she was falling out with whoever. And then the next day she'd say, "Can so and so come over?" And I'm like, "Oh my days, I've just gone and had a go at their parents."
yeah,
There's no way they're coming over now. And that's when I
literally.
learned, like, okay, girls is a different ball game to boys. Boys, I mean, as well, I don't know if it's because my son is just so much more relaxed about everything, or if that's a boy thing. I don't know. Never
Yeah,
having been a boy and being a first time boy mum to a teenager, it's all new territory again with me. But I did find it interesting to hear, your viewpoints, like from the viewpoint of someone who was a bully, and it really brings home that phrase that we hear so often, which is hurt people hurt people.
yeah. And I could not agree more with that sentence because, like, at that time, I was so hurting because I was also, you know, going through what we thought at the time was just grief, but it was also like the start of my mental health conditions and all of that piled into one. It was like, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with me. I wasn't happy with my life. I wasn't happy. I thought everything was really unfair. So I had to like reflect that onto somebody, and unfortunately this poor girl got the brunt of it. But I did make my amends because she left the school and then I found out we were going to the same sixth form. So by that point, obviously, we'd had a few years. I'd started therapy, I was medicated and started becoming a nicer human being. And I did find her and reach out to her and apologize. And then we were friends for a really, really long time after that. So I made my amends in the end, but it definitely was because I was hurting. I had to hurt people.
You had to hurt other people.
Yeah.
And I really feel we talked a lot about this the other day, that when it is the responsibility, I feel, of a school
Mhm.
or the care center or wherever the children are or the teenagers are, if they're in a youth cafe or anywhere like that, I do really feel that it's important that the people who are responsible for them in those situations are monitoring things like this. And like we always say, when I was at school, the victim maybe got some support, but it would take a lot of intervention from the parents to get help for bullying. And quite often it was left unchecked. But I also strongly believe that the child that is doing the bullying needs help as well.
Yeah.
And I always believe that children's behavior is a reflection of where they are mentally, where they are physically as well. And I think that children that are hurting are going to lash out in particular ways, and that could be bullying.
Yeah.
So a child that is maybe being bullied at home or going through a hard time and can't talk to the people that they have at home, I believe it's your responsibility as a caregiver to provide that help and support. And I know I'm not saying the victim doesn't need help and support as well. Of course they do, but there
Yeah.
does need to be a lot of measures in place to look out for children that are behaving in this way as well. Because from my experience, and I wasn't bullied, Max has been a little bit. So from my experience from that, and obviously my brother as well, um, my experience from those situations has shown that the people doing the bullying were not in a good situation at home and needed someone to reach out and help them.
Yeah.
So, because of that, it leads me, and because of your experience as well, it leads me to believe that people that are in those positions, children particularly, are not. I don't believe you're born bad. I don't believe that,
I
and
don't either.
I believe it's what we're around, and you you are a product of your environment. And we know that even as we grow older, you become the sum of the five people or so that you spend the most time with. So those kind of behaviors are obviously learned behaviors, and they're obviously there for a reason. And I think it is the duty of caregivers of children to make sure that they're watching out for these kind of things and helping. Again, what we talked about in our first podcast, when we talked about how beneficial it would be to introduce into school systems um, like a class to help with feelings of anxiety and fear and upset. This sort of thing, if it's addressed even at primary school age, would go so far into helping the problem with bullying, the problem with pressures that we feel as teenagers, body image, self-image, self-love. I think it's really important in this day and age that we are looking at the emotional and spiritual well-being of our children at
Yeah.
every step of the way. And we know from what we went through, you went through something horrific at a teenage, a very impressionable teenage era of your life where things are so hard anyway. You went through something that literally ripped your entire world apart, and is something that nobody would ever want anyone to have to experience at such a young age. And grief is one of the most intense things that you could possibly go through at any age, of someone that close to you, let alone at such a young, impressionable age. And for me, myself, being kicked out of my parents' home, the kind of violent circumstances in what I had to left. And like you, I'm not putting blame onto anyone. I just think it was obviously a very hard situation for my parents to be in with what they were going through with themselves and with me, with undiagnosed ADHD. And like I said to you before, I think a bit of autistic
Mm.
spectrum as well. My own flare ups, I suppose, or meltdowns, and everything I was going through, a brother and sister as well that were younger. And obviously, even though when I was younger, I honestly felt like my parents had the answer to everything and knew everything because they seemed to, manage the house and do everything.
Yeah.
But obviously, now being older, I can see that they clearly did not know everything.
No, no, because you think you're going to get to be an adult and all of a sudden you're just going to know
Life
everything.
is
And I
sorted.
know nothing.
Yeah. And I blamed them for a really long time. I did. I harbored a lot of resentment towards my parents for everything and the way I felt like I was treated. But I don't feel blame particularly for them now. I just feel that there was a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And and like we said, because of that, because of the lack of understanding that was around, even though our lives were very different, they led us to very similar situations where mental health was a big problem. Outside influences,
Mm.
led us down paths that we might not have gone down had we felt safe and secure in who we are as people and in
Yeah.
ourselves. And a lot of years of body image issues and self-image issues and confidence issues that kind of stemmed from that teenage era.
Yeah. I definitely think, a lot of, because even it's probably only really for me been over maybe like the last 10 years, maybe, that I've become more comfortable in who I am as a person. Like, there are still, like, I'm not perfect, there are still times where I look in the mirror and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what am I working with here? Like, or I think, my God, Charlotte, eat a salad. Like, stop eating chocolate and eat a
Yeah.
salad. Like, there are still those times, but I'm so not as hard on myself now as I used to be. And I don't feel the need to overcompensate by, being the one at the party that drinks the most because you're overcompensating and you're trying to be that girl that they all talk about being like, oh my God, she drank so much, or, she did this and she did that. Like, I don't feel the need to be that person anymore.
Yeah.
But when you're a teenager, you definitely feel the need to be that person, or at least I did, to be
Yeah,
like,
the need to try and impress people
yeah,
in
even if
any
you're
way.
expressing them in completely the wrong way. Like, it
Yeah,
is not cool to drink yourself into oblivion at
no,
15. Like, that's
yeah.
not okay. But, you know, I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do, because then people are going to be talking about how cool I am.
Yeah,
Because,
and people will like me
yeah, and people will
and
want to
they'll want to
invite me
hang
to
around
their,
me.
yeah, they'll
Yeah,
invite me to all the parties because
yeah,
I'll be the fun one that
yeah,
everyone wants to invite. So,
yeah,
yeah, but I think it's something you never, and like, this might be, it might be true for men as well, but I know for women, it's something you never really grow out of, is like having those insecurities and feeling those worries. But I think as
yeah.
you get older, you become less bothered by them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I 100% agree with what you're saying. When I was younger, and I'm going to go so far as to say that, yeah, this started in my teens, but it carried on throughout my 20s as well, for sure. The desire to be liked and to fit in
Mm.
and to feel like I belong somewhere, and even into my 30s, to be honest. And like, very much like you, it's only been in the last kind of 10 years or so that I've really got to grips with who I am as a person, and that I have learned to be kinder to myself.
Yeah.
I still have a lot of times when I look in the mirror and think, oh, how did I become so gross today? And yesterday I
Yeah.
thought that I looked all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened overnight? Oh, my days. I still have moments like that, but I have it has been a gradual kind of realization, I think, as I've got older and I've navigated through a lot of the past, and I've come to a place of acceptance for what I had to go through, what I experienced, the way I felt, the situations I ended up in and the people I ended up around that weren't the best people for me, but I still learned a lot from those situations.
Yeah.
And I never want my children to have to experience that. I really don't.
No.
And I feel like my experience of that is going to be pivotal in how I'm bringing them up, and even to the extent of my son. When I asked him what are your worries growing up as a teenager today, and he said to me, "Nothing, mum. I haven't got any worries really. I don't know, maybe what phone I've got." And
Which is
that
so
was the
great.
extent of it. He's so, and I think maybe because he's ASD as well, maybe he sees things a little bit differently to girls. Obviously he's a boy, he's going to see things differently to girls, and maybe it's not the same for boys. I really do not know, but I just want to make sure that he always feels valued, that he has a voice, and that he has a strong sense of who he is. And I think that I've succeeded in that with him, but it's only because of the things that I've learned I don't want to do as
Yeah.
a parent,
And
and
I'm
it's,
I'm exactly the same with Grace. Like, I don't want
yeah,
her to ever have to kind of experience the stuff that I went through and go down those kind of paths. And I'm
yeah,
trying really hard to kind of instill in her now, like being really open and transparent and talking about things in a really kind of matter of fact way, so that she feels like she has that safe, secure little bubble that
yeah,
she can come into, so she can be the kind of person she wants to be, because
yeah,
she has even if she feels unsafe at school, in the sense that she does have those pressures of how do I look and what am I wearing and who are my friends, she knows she can come home to a really safe bubble where
happy
she can be
place.
who she wants to be. And I
Yeah,
do also say to her so many times when we have these, oh, so and so said this and now I'm not talking to so and so because of this, I'm like, it's so irrelevant. Like,
yeah,
you're not going to talk to those people in 10 years time, like, you're really not. And it's going to be so irrelevant. And even if you are, like, I do know people that are still friends with their primary school best friend, but even if you are, the fallouts you have at school are going to be so inconsequential to the rest of your life.
yeah.
You really have
What?
to try not to give so much energy to
Yeah.
that small part of your life.
And I think I know for me anyway, maybe for you as well, but when we were teenagers, it was so important what we did at school. I mean,
Mm,
even for my mum and dad saying to me, you have to do well in your exams, you have to do, and it seemed like the weight of the world was really on my shoulders. Like I
Oh
had to
yeah.
perform, I had to get the good grades, I had to make sure people liked me. The pressure was just constantly, there. And it was really hard to deal with, especially
Yeah.
with feeling so, out of my depth in myself as well, and not trusting who I was as a person, or knowing, like, can I actually make a decision now for the rest of my life? And obviously, looking back, that's a ridiculous thought to have. I mean, how could a teenager know what they want to do for the rest of their life and have any clue as to what direction they're going in? And why were those pressures put on us in the first place? I love the fact that my son loves going to school. He's interested in what he's learning. He has a really good grasp over everything that he's doing. But I am the same as you, and I always tell him, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like, this
Yeah.
is an important time of your life for you to just figure out a bit of who you are and what you like, and just have fun.
Yeah.
Just have fun with your learning. Focus on the things that you're really interested in. And at the end of the day, you can always learn. You can go back to school, you can go back to college, you can do anything that you want to do at any point of time in your life. School is not the beginning and the end of your life. There's so
No.
much more out there. And I just want him to, get through this part of his life where he can then move on for the rest of his life. Because I feel like, for me, and I think yours is probably the same as well, we've spent pretty much up until now trying to undo a lot of the trauma and damage that was done when we were teenagers. So for me, it's been years and years of therapy, of self-healing, of counseling, of learning, to love myself, of helping myself heal from the PTSD, from, the violence that I experienced at a young age, the abandonment issues that I had from a young age, from, being kicked out of my parents' home. And all of those different things I felt took a massive toll on me. And, it took me years to come through that and be at peace with those sorts of things, so that I could move on with my life. And then when I hear then of other people that I was at school with that have gone on to live these really great successful lives, and I think that's so cool, because they obviously had that, solid foundation
Foundation.
to build from. Yeah. And I think it's really important that when you have experienced teenage trauma, you use that in a positive way to help other teenagers.
Mm.
Even if you don't have kids, you can use your experiences to help point kids in the right direction, and not, kind of waste years of their life trying to resolve what they experienced as a teenager. Because I did feel very angry for a long time that I had to spend so long fixing myself before I could really do anything with my life. And that's not a good, that's not a healthy way to be in adulthood, trying to fix the years of teenage trauma.
So yeah, one thing that I want to kind of add on to that is, Grace is doing her GCSEs at the moment. And we're looking at colleges and all of, what she wants to do and where she wants to go. And actually she has a pretty solid idea of what she wants to do, which is great. But, I don't want her to feel like she's under immense pressure to do all of these things. Because, like you said, you can always come back and relearn and things like that. But part of me also doesn't like, I want her to do the best that she can, because that's all you can do. You can only do the best in something. But I don't want her to have to struggle to get to where she wants to be, because I basically failed all of my GCSEs except like one. And I went to sixth form and tried to do my maths and English GCSEs again and failed again. So just gave up and went to work. But it meant that I had to do so many really rubbish, boring jobs to get the work experience to actually do anything that makes any decent money. And as much as I enjoy my job, it probably isn't what I sat and thought about doing when I was younger.
Mm.
So, I don't want to put the pressure on Grace to be like, you have to do this, there's no other option. But also, I want her to know that it will be a lot harder if she goes the other way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't want to make it so that they go, "Oh, I don't have to do anything. I can just cruise through because
Yeah,
this doesn't matter." But at the same time, you don't want them to be like pulling their hair out and suffering with depression and anxiety because they're so stressed
stressed.
about their
Yeah.
results that they think the world will literally end if they don't pass.
It's
Yeah.
it's a
It's
fine
that
line.
balance, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah,
It's
it
that real
really
fine
is.
line between being like, look, do the best you can do. And
Yeah.
then if you still don't get what you need to get, there are options.
Yeah.
But you need to, yeah, it's that kind of fine line between not doing anything, which is what I did, and doing so much that you become really stressed. But I think the reason that I chose to do the complete polar opposite is not only do you have the school putting the pressure on you, but I went to private school. So my mum paid for my education.
Well, yeah.
I had this like hanging over me that my mum was paying thousands of pounds a term for me to go to school.
Well,
So you have that pressure, and then you have the school putting pressure on you because also they're
yeah.
a private school, so they can't have someone
They
for
want the results.
GCSEs. Like
Mm.
that's like not done. So then I just was like, no, I'm just not doing anything.
No, I
Like
can't compute.
huge overwhelm, and was like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, we're
Yeah.
okay. I'm
Mhm.
just not going to go today. That's fine. Um, but yeah, it's that kind of balance, isn't it? You don't want to put the massive pressure on, but it's really tough. Like it is really
It
hard.
is tough. It is really tough. And as
Yeah.
hard as it is for the kids, it's very hard for a parent as well, especially,
Mm.
I think, especially when you've had traumatic experiences in your teenage life that make you, question so much as you're growing up as well. That it really is a lot of responsibility as a parent as well as a teenager. But then I suppose that's our jobs and that's what we're here for. And we're here to try and guide our kids in the right path. But like you say, and with teenagers as well, you know, I don't know how Grace is, but Max is very literal. So I really have to be careful how I word things to him because if I say to him, look, you don't have to worry, he'll go, okay, I don't have to worry.
Yeah, and then not do anything and just switch off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really a fine line of encouraging. And I'm a big believer in encouragement. Like I love, praising good work and encouraging and showing that off and making him feel like, really good about what he's done
Yeah.
because it makes him want to do better and want
Yeah.
to do more. So I'm a big believer in that. But I'm also a big believer in finding the things that he really enjoys and he really likes. And that for him at the moment is creative writing and art. Those are subjects that he really comes alive in. So finding those things that he enjoys and then helping him develop the things that he enjoys keeps him interested in learning.
Mm.
And the same as you, like Max is just going up to secondary school this year. So there's a big transition happening
Yeah.
there for him. And we've managed so far, touch wood, we've managed to keep it, pretty exciting. And he's been up to the school that he's going to a few times and he's seen the teachers and he's been into the classrooms and he's seen a lot of the work that gets done. And at the moment, he's really excited because he is very intelligent and he is like a sponge for the things that he wants to know about. So
Yeah.
he does like learning. So it's great to be able to encourage that and help him do that. But also, like what we've spoken about is giving them that sense of self-confidence and that safety net at home. Like I know that you are such a good mom to Grace and Darcy, and that they're such happy kids, they're so well rounded, and you can really see that you've brought them up to have a really strong sense of self and a sense of self-belief and safety at home. And I think the ways that we've been doing that with our kids, the ways that we've navigated parenting and those things, I've always been very open with Max, and I know you're the same.
Yeah.
And I've always been a big fan of discussing emotions, financial situations, anything like that, because it was never spoken about when I was a kid. It was hushed conversations when we were in bed and arguments that we could hear glimpses of. So we knew there were problems, but we didn't know what the problems were,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't make you feel safe. It made you feel scared that things were happening that you didn't know about. We weren't taught how to, manage money or anything like that. Money was just something that we had, as long as we didn't pay the bills and we hid from the people that were knocking on the door to get their money,
Yeah.
So that was another kind of bad thing that I learned. You can go shopping at the weekend if you hide from the bills and don't pay them. um Even something like that just didn't, that took a long time to unlearn and to get some sort of financial stability in my life. And then things like, emotions and talking about how we felt and stuff like that, we that didn't happen. That didn't happen. There was no safety net at home with things like that. It was never I never felt like I could just go and sit down and talk to my mum and dad about how I felt if I was feeling insecure or upset about anything. I was always told not to be so bloody stupid and to just get on with it. Stop being a drama queen. That was
Yeah.
a huge thing. Stop being a drama queen, Charlotte. Just go and get on with it. Just get on with it. And I don't want my kids to grow up feeling like that. Like we, every day we sit down at the table and talk about like what happened. And if he'll say like, oh, so and so did this and he tripped me up. And I'm always saying to him, like, how did that make you feel?
Mm.
And he's like, fine. Or I'm like, do you want to talk about it? Do you want to talk about anything? You can talk to me about anything. And we are very open with Max and talk to him about every important decision we have to make as a family. um you know Again, with finances, if we have enough money at the end of the month, right, we can either save it, we can do this, or we could get a takeaway, or what would you like to do? It's like he's involved in everything, because he is involved in everything. And yes, I believe there's some things that you shouldn't talk to your children about, obviously, but I do believe that at his age, and obviously at Grace's age as well, they are well capable of understanding what it takes to run a house, what it takes to talk about your emotions and how you feel, and to be confident in yourself and to be well rounded. And I love to try and inspire a sense of confidence in him. Like, he'll put some clothes on and he'll walk out his room, and I'm like, Max, you look really good today. I don't ever remember my parents saying that to me. I
No.
remember, Charlotte, you look a mess in those trousers, or go and put something nice on, or never that I look nice. So even something that small like that, and he's like, oh yeah, thanks, mum. Gets a little bit of swagger in his step.
Yeah, and I think
And
that's so important. I think it's
yeah,
so important to encourage the good in
yeah,
what your kids are
yeah,
doing. Like, I think it's really, I think it's really good that you're encouraging Max to do the things he actually enjoys doing at school, because
yeah.
kids really, really struggle with school. So if there is particular topics and subjects that they're really good at, like
Focus
Grace
on
is
them.
an incredible artist. Like, she is
Yeah,
amazing at art. Unfortunately, art GCSE is not for her, because it's all very much copying what other people are doing. There's no
yeah,
personal style, so she struggles with it a little bit. But like, when she does any drawings that she does, always like throwing loads of praise in that direction.
yeah,
And yeah, if she, we go somewhere and she dresses up and she looks really nice, it's like, making sure that she feels that confidence within herself
yeah.
is really important, because I
And
didn't.
seeing that in a 16-year-old girl is,
Mm,
it's rare, really. It is,
it is.
because they're so insecure anyway. So
Oh,
boosting that is so such a small thing, but it goes so far to someone's own mental image of themselves and how they feel.
100%, because like Grace has no reason to be insecure. Like,
Yeah,
she's taller than me, so she's got to be like nearly 5'10". She's
yeah,
a size 10, and like, there's nothing of her. She's
yeah,
gorgeous and a really lovely person and a really good
yeah.
friend, a great big sister. Like, she's got nothing
She's
to
got
be
it all going
insecure
on.
about. But yet she goes, oh, but mum, I've got hip dips. And I'm like, so do I. They're
I didn't
hereditary.
even know what a hip dip was when I was 16.
And I'm like, it's fine. They're hereditary. So do I, and so does your nonna.
Yeah.
It's fine.
You can always find something,
There's
can't you?
always something. So yeah, I'm
Mm,
really into like positive reinforcement. And I even do
yeah,
it with Darcy, like, she's 2, and we're potty training at the moment, when she goes on the toilet and she's not had any accidents, Grace and I are like jumping around in the house and screaming,
Yeah.
shouting like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Like, you're
Yeah.
so good. And even now she gets on the toilet and if she's dry, she goes, I'm dry, no accidents. She gets really excited about it.
It's a really good way to help kids, grow
Yeah.
in confidence and just feel
Mm.
safe and happy. And I am someone who, any little thing, like if I go through something with Max, or I know something like puberty and things like that are coming up, I am Googling, support, advice, chats. I'm looking for things that he can read through as well,
Yeah.
that I can read through. How do I deal with this? Okay, so this situation is happening. How do I deal with my son telling me silly fibs instead? Like if I say to him, did you eat all the cheese? He'll go, what? And I know that means, yeah, he ate all
Yeah.
the cheese, but for some reason he just can't say it. He's like, no, no, don't remember. I'm like, Max, just say you ate it all. Just
It's like it's not a big deal. It's really not
yeah.
the end of the
And I'm like,
world.
I have to be able to trust you. And he's like, yeah, but I think I might get told off if I say yeah. And I'm like, no, all I'm gonna say to you is, can you please write it down that you ate it all?
Yeah.
So that when I go and do the shopping, because in my head I'm thinking, oh yeah, we've got that, we've got this, we've got that, and I don't buy it, and then I come back, I'm like, who ate all the cheese? Or why don't you tell me there's no toothpaste? And he's like, oh, I thought I'd be in trouble. Why? I'm like, when have I ever shouted at you for brushing your teeth? Do you know what I
And that's
mean?
like, it's so crazy that because Grace does do things like that. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, Darcy, not so much. She's two, so she's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
a maniac 24/7. But like, Grace does things like that. And like, I think my situation with Grace is slightly different because I've come into like full-time parenting with her when she was 14
Yeah.
because, she was with her dad for a really huge chunk of her life. So I've come in at probably the worst time, but also the best time
Yeah.
because she is like self-sufficient and independent and we can have those kind of conversations. But yeah, sometimes those little things that I'm just like, oh my god, why are you doing that? Like, why
Yeah.
why do you do these
Yeah.
things?
Yeah. So like
Like,
I actually Google things like that, and I'm like, what's the best way to deal with this? Because obviously it's frustrating for me, but I don't want him, like, if he's already scared to tell me,
yeah,
why is he scared to tell, like, and so I'll look for advice on that. Is it something I'm doing wrong? No, this is just teenagers. This is what teenagers
yeah,
do. They're so self-absorbed that they just focus on them and their immediate vicinity, and that's you know something that I am aware of, but it still can be frustrating. So navigating those kind of things, I'm so blessed, touch wood, that he hasn't got any temper issues or anything like that. There isn't anything else going on that I have to worry about. Like I said, he is ASD, but what we call them his maxisms. And like, when he was seeing the psychiatrist and going through that, they were like, how have you managed all these years? Do you know what I mean? How have you managed on your own without the extra support? And we just said, like, we just have. It's
mhm.
not like it's our life. It's just how we've grown together. And Max needs this, and this extra. So we just do. It's not something that we've ever questioned.
No, it's
It's
just
not
part of
something.
your life.
Yeah. So like I said to the psychiatrist, it's not been a case of managing. It's just been Max. Like it's just part
Mm.
of him and what makes him his quirky little self. So we've just managed, but I am blessed that he doesn't have any self-harm tendencies or tendencies of harming other people or anything like that to contend with. So on one hand, I think maybe he's just a really easy child,
Yeah,
and he's like, when things are all safe and secure for him, he is really easy. But maybe it is how we've brought him up as well. But
I
like
think
those,
I
yeah,
think
so
because
those
you're
kind of
so
small.
open with him about everything and
Yeah.
you get him to talk about his feelings as much as you
Yeah.
talk about your own, and you
Yeah.
make him part of every decision you make and every discussion you have. He's just as important and just a part of it. He probably doesn't feel like he needs to lash out in any other way
Yeah.
because he has that, what we were saying we were lacking is that really safe bubble at home
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
he's seen, he's heard, he's loved, he's included, he's
Yeah.
understood, even with his, additional needs. You understand him, you get him, you give him what he needs.
Yeah.
And I think that's really
And
important.
we
And
value his input, you
yeah,
know.
and that comes from, I think, kids that go through trauma, then heal, then parent. I think
Yeah.
that's where that comes, because I'm very much the same with Grace, and I will be with Darcy as we come up through the years with her. Like I said before, see, my situation with Grace is very different, and that's a whole podcast in itself. But
Yeah.
when she came over here, we did have to do a lot of reworking stuff with her.
Yeah.
It's not my story to tell, it's hers, but she obviously did go through a lot of what we call trauma over the years of
Yeah.
being with her dad. So we had to
Yeah.
unwork and unlearn quite a lot of stuff quite quickly, so that she has that now safe, secure bubble here where she feels
Yeah.
like she can talk about how she feels, she can be open, she can be who she wants to be. And yeah, we still have moments where we clash with each other, because
Yeah.
she's 16 and I'm trying to learn how to parent a 16-year-old when
Yeah.
actually sometimes I feel like I'm still 16. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so we do still clash, but we find a lot of common ground where we can sit down and have these open conversations, and I can
Yeah.
say, this is how I feel when you do this. When you do this, this is how it makes me feel, and vice versa. Like, she can do the same. Like, she can
Yeah.
say, I feel this way because of this, like, I feel insecure because of this, and then we can come up with a solution together. And
Yeah.
but that goes for all conversations. We're very much the same kind of parents as you are. With I talk to Grace about our finances, we make decisions together. If it's going to be a tight month because we've had lots of birthdays, then I tell her and say, look, it's going to be a tight month this
It's
month,
going to
so
be hard.
please don't ask me for anything, because I'm hating the fact I'm going to have to say no.
Yeah.
But we'll be able to do this and this after. you know
Yeah.
it's going to be a really expensive month because of X, Y, and Z. So is there anything else we need to get? Like, money's going to come in next week, is there anything you need? Like, we have those
Yeah.
conversations. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important, because again, obviously my upbringing was different to yours, but I always just thought that money was just always there. It was always available.
Yeah.
Like, whether it be a good or a bad thing, my mum very rarely said no to anything ever. And
Yeah.
whether that was her coping mechanism for the fact that it was just her now when we were growing up. But it was always a, yep, you can have that. Mum, can I have this? Yeah, sure. Can we get a takeaway? Yeah, sure. It was always a thing, but I
Yeah.
knew how bad it actually was until I'm now older and we have these conversations and we
Yeah.
actually talk about it. And I know more about her finances now than I ever did when we lived under the same roof. And she doesn't even live in the same country as me anymore. And I know more about her life now than I did then, which is mental.
And Grace is growing up having a really good understanding of, the financial burden of running a house as well,
Yeah,
rather than growing up completely clueless and oblivious to it.
unaware.
Because I don't know about you, but when I left home, that that was a very hard learning curve for me.
Yeah, I
The
had
financial
no
running of
idea.
a house. No,
Yeah,
me neither.
no idea what
Absolutely
to do.
zero idea.
You know,
I knew that when the taxman used to come around, we used to hide. So, and then mum used to take us shopping and buy things that she wanted, but we wouldn't pay the bill. And there was always arguments about, why hasn't this bill been paid? Why isn't that bill been paid? But you've just spent like 100 quid on face cream.
yeah,
Why have the kids all got brand new Barbie dolls, but none of the bills have been paid? And
yeah,
we nearly lost our house when I was a kid. Um, and grandma and granddad had to step in. And then when I left home and got my own house, I had no control over my spending. I didn't pay my bills the same as mum and brought things I wanted. And
yeah,
then, I nearly lost my home. My grandma and granddad had to step in and pay my rent and my council tax, because those things did not get paid. And I had a water bill for over £500. And, that was quite a high water bill at the time. We're
yeah.
talking like 20 years ago now. Um, a rent bill of 2.5 grand where I hadn't paid my rent, council tax bill piling up.
Mm.
And I had to learn how to manage my money. My grandma had to step in and teach me how to manage money. And I think having an understanding on these kind of things as you're a teenager and growing up goes a long way into that. I don't know, like with you, you could ask your mum for something and she'd say yes. A lot of things we would ask for and our parents would say no, and that would build resentment because I didn't
Mm.
know why they were saying no. Other
Like,
kids got
why?
stuff.
Yeah.
Why can't we have that, you know? And just you just can't.
Mm.
But why? I've been good. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what?
And it's that,
Why?
like, that's why I think it's so important that to build, because I think everything stems from your home life.
Yeah.
So if you're in a home life where you have your the issues or ups and downs, or anything that isn't that kind of safe, secure bubble, that's when it stems into a lot of things. So being really transparent with emotions, I think, are really important, especially
Oh
when we're
yeah.
talking about teenagers. I think
Yeah.
it's really, really important to make sure you are discussing emotions and
Yeah.
honoring how they feel about things,
Yeah.
even though sometimes I'm sat there thinking, oh, Jesus, is that really upsetting you? Like, come on now.
Yeah.
But in their world, it's like the biggest thing. And
Yeah.
being able to talk about it openly and have those frank discussions and know the ins and outs of things
Yeah.
just
And
has a
to
knock-on
know,
effect
like,
to a lot of
it's
stuff.
perfectly acceptable to be frustrated. It's
Yeah.
okay to get angry sometimes. And like, even with Max, a big thing is it's okay to cry. Just
Mm.
because you're a boy doesn't mean that you can't get sad, you
I
know.
think for boys, that's more important than
That's
girls.
a really big thing at the moment.
Yeah.
He gets frustrated and I'm like, why are you, what's the matter? Why are you making that face? He's like, I'm not gonna cry. And I'm like, you can cry.
Yeah.
Just let
Like,
it
it's
out. Just
okay.
it's okay, you know. You're just a kid. Like it's okay to get upset and feel sad. And you don't
Yeah.
have to be a man all the
All the
time, or what
time.
you think a man is, you know.
Yeah, it's
And
okay to
cry.
have feelings and
Yeah.
emotions
Yeah.
and to be upset about stuff. Like, that's
Yeah.
okay. And I think as long as we're cultivating that within our home lives for our kids, then touch wood, they won't have to then spend the years that we spent
Undoing.
rebuilding and
Yeah.
undoing all of that stuff.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree with you there.
And I really think that, like you say, like the home life, what the environment that they spend the most time in is where all of this stuff can grow and flourish. And the importance of good communication and understanding. I think a lot of times, certainly in my experience anyway, how I feel, I mean, I could be totally wrong about this as well, this is just how it comes across to me, is that my mum and dad didn't have any understanding or maybe patience for how we felt as kids.
Yeah.
So it was like their way or the highway a lot of the time, and we weren't really given that outlet to be, express ourselves. That's how I feel. I could have that completely wrong, but that's the way that it was, it pressed on me as a teenager.
Mm.
And I think it's really important that, for me, the kids here feel like they can talk to me about anything.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
that,
really crucial. Being
yeah,
able to have that sounding board
yeah,
as a teenager, going through stuff, to have that sounding board is really
yeah,
important. And if
that,
I think if you
sorry.
don't have that, like, sorry, I think we've both got so much we want to just say. But
Yeah,
no, like, I think if you don't have that, that's when the problems occur, when you don't have
yeah,
that outlet for communication, because you can't
absolutely.
always talk to your friends about this stuff because it's not always cool to talk
Yeah,
about emotions and
yeah.
feelings, frustrations.
I think it's really important to feel like you can talk about anything without someone getting angry at you or judging you or anything like that, where you can literally just offload, say how you feel, and just have someone to listen. Like I always say to Max, I am not here to dictate how you live your life. That's not what I'm here for. I'm just here, to look after you, to look out for you, and to guide you in the right direction and to help you when you make mistakes.
Yeah, to be that person that can be
Yeah,
your shoulder to cry on when, excuse the French, the shit hits the fan,
yeah,
because you decided actually you made a wrong choice and now you've got to fix it.
yeah,
But yeah, like, I'm not going to tell Grace how to live her life. Like,
yeah,
she can live her life the way she wants to. There are things that we do agree on that make life easier for everybody involved. We
yeah,
live in quite a small space, so we are on top of each other quite a lot. So there's a lot
yeah,
of not so much like rules, but things that we do that make
Have
everybody's
to
life
respect each other's
easier.
boundaries
Yeah.
and
But it is very much a case of I'm just gonna slowly guide you in the right direction,
yeah,
and but the decisions are
are
ultimately
yours.
yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think especially as they come into their teenage life, you have to loosen that hold up. I mean, obviously, Darcy's age, if she's running across the road and looking backwards, you're gonna pick her up or grab her and make sure she doesn't trip over a curb. But I
Yeah.
think when they get to their teenage life, you have to let them fall flat on their face sometimes because you have to. And I always say this to Max, don't worry about messing up because you have to mess up sometimes. You
Yeah.
have to. Like I mess up all the time still.
I still
And
do
that's how I
now,
learn.
yeah. I still make mistakes now. I still
Yeah,
have to go to my mum for advice, or to my
yeah,
mother-in-law for advice. I still have to go to people and be like, what do I do?
yeah. How do I
How do
deal
I
with this?
navigate this situation? Like,
Yeah,
but I think all we can do as far as like helping our kids is just keep that communication open, keep that
yeah,
transparency, keep
yeah.
that positive reinforcement, and hope that that then flows down for them, and
Through them.
and through them. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully they can take the best pieces of what we've passed on to them and what they've learned and move forward with their own children, maybe,
Yeah.
with even better understanding. Like I keep saying this, but I really feel as humans, we are on an emotional and kind of spiritual evolutionary path right now.
I agree.
And that's why there's so much extra talk about mental health and your emotions and how you feel. And that's coming a lot more now into kind of mainstream. Like we said when we were at school, like for you being diagnosed with BPD while you were at school was a bit of a taboo.
Yeah, it was
It
not
wasn't talked
something.
about.
Yeah, no, nobody really spoke about it. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't mental health just wasn't a thing,
Yeah.
and they didn't really know how they were going to deal with it and how they were going to cope with it. And but luckily, now it is something that people do talk about, and there is so much more
Yeah.
available resource, uh,
Yeah. And
which
that's something we want to share with people.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. That kind of brings on like something to definitely mention is we are going to detail quite a few like resources that are available for teenagers that feel like they are suffering or struggling or just need someone to talk to because they might not necessarily have that. There are
Yeah.
loads of like free available resources. So
Websites and yeah,
yeah, we'll make sure that we link all of that in the description
in the
of this
description of the
podcast.
podcast. Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. And as always, anybody is more than welcome to ask us any questions, to pop us a message, or to get in
Yeah.
touch with us if they want to talk in more detail or have any questions about anything that we've spoken about.
Yeah.
We're always happy to help other people with that.
100%. Like, I'm not like a professional of any standpoint, but if you want to talk about teenage parenting and you need someone who's also got a 16-year-old that you want to talk to about, then that's cool. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have any like child psychology degrees or anything
No,
like
me neither.
that. I just have life experience, and
Yeah.
if there is anything like that, then yeah, we're always available to talk about
To
things, because
talk.
that's kind of what this podcast is all about, is just being
Yeah,
able
just
to talk
sharing our
about stuff and
experiences.
yeah, find a platform that we can talk about things we have experienced, and
Yeah.
hopefully, give a voice to somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And help others in doing so.
Exactly.